Do not adjust your device. We are finally moving on with the Hearts of the Machine demo, which I planned to finish up weeks ago, but did not work out that way. Our next task under the Exponential Power Growth project is to delve into geothermal power and expand our electrical production so that we can build more of what we need. We require a new resource, neodymium, to build the geothermal power, so we're grabbing our sledge and using Wallripping to get it. However, not every Wallripping target is identical. The yield here is at least 9,000 neodymium, but notice the heavy response. That will include a cruiser and can be somewhat annoying. The easier locations with a mild response only give 4 to 5,000, but that is still enough to get a geothermal plant going. We'll take this route for ease and simplicity, and then it simply becomes a matter of going through various turns, blasting the enemies as we have seen before in similar combats. If you observe the resource bar in the upper left, each turn that goes by that we're still doing the wall ripping, we get a partial amount of the resource. It doesn't just all come at the end. There's also a random element to exactly how many enemies you're going to face in each turn, but again, mild response, not a problem for us to deal with. And we are clear. Time to build ourselves a geothermal well, and we have enough neodymium to have a bit of spare. These are fairly small size, so we can fit them a lot of different places, and as usual, we're going to have to wait a few turns for it to build. In the meantime, we'll get a fresh PMC imposter out there and start working on some contemplations that I think I mentioned briefly in the last episode, but it has been a while. Skimming the mines and having an android not marked as defective is important here. A modest engineering skill check has to be passed, but essentially we want to design drones that are going to help ourselves to the fruits of Vorsiber's labor. As a result, we have 2 new research projects to pursue. Thorvatite mining allows us to get scandium or neodymium, and the bauxite option will produce bastnasite, liquid gallium, or aluminum. Some of these we don't have any uses for yet. The main point is simply that there are 2 options and they're going to give us different things. One more contemplation left to hunt down. A biological source of neural networks, but our PMC imposter is not going to suffice. We'll need to get a technician out here to handle this one. That's a little more like it. Now we can pass the skill check. And that leaves us with 2 more researches to do, Mind Thief and Borrowed Mines. The fact that the Mind Thief requires more scandium than we currently have is a nice good hint as to which mine skimmer we might want to go for first. Naturally, at this point, to be fully prepared, it's a good idea to build out however many geothermal wells you need to get a bit of an energy surplus. Max out the mainframe towers you can build, add whatever coprocessors or bulk Android capacity you feel is appropriate, and so on. A single geothermal well more than doubled our power output and put our electricity concerns in the rearview mirror for quite a while. We're maxed out at 3 tower mainframes and also built one additional coprocessor. Couldn't build any more than that due to a lack of computing cycles. That does boost our mental energy up to 11 each turn though. I've also taken the liberty of building another network range extender so that we can reach our next project, building a skimmer for one of the mines. Power costs for these are minimal, but notice there's a minimum distance from other mines, there's a heavy response expected when we build it, and considerable deterrence is required, over 14,000, to keep the attacks away. We can build on any of these small blue locations in mining zones. They can be quite difficult to see. To deal with the deterrence requirement, I've built out more bulk android squads, specifically Keanus. Bulk Keanus at this stage get almost 10,000 deterrence each, which is a little over twice what bulk combat units get, and even more higher compared to the other bulk android types. Sadly, we're not able to just waltz in and build our mining skimmer without getting rid of the guards in the zone. Vorcibur definitely values its mining operations highly. Fortunately, our current androids can handle these pretty easily. They're basically of rent-a-cop quality in comparison. This is considered a restricted zone, which means we can't just waltz in. But if we just change our stance to combat and just say, look, we're coming, then it works a little better. At this point, just want to move in, make ourselves nice and comfortable, find some buildings, and take cover on them. I'm keeping a bulk combat unit nearby, but not in the area, and then of course we'll move the Keanus in. As for the Thorvatite skimmer itself, transport's kind of blocking the view a bit here, which is annoying, but any of these whitish buildings will work. Choose the biggest one just because, doesn't really make any difference. And hey, look, more guards. Now this is not the response to building the skimmer. That doesn't come until the skimmer is built. This is an area that periodically more guards are going to be brought in by their transports. And so there's multiple ways you can deal with that. Knocking down the transports is probably a waste of time. You can have extra bulk units in here to deal with the guards that are coming, or move some of your mobile androids down to deal with them when the time comes. But the deterrence is not going to make it an entirely quiet area. What it is going to do is prevent specifically large attacks in response to the skimmer itself. Now, after a few turns of construction, the skimmer is finished, and we do see their official response. Notice that this isn't actually directly aimed at the skimmer itself. Some of them are trying to go up and attack our area by the tower. And this is part of why I have these different bulk combat units spread out. The one down by the mining zone, and a few more are up here, just playing center field, you might say, ready to deal with such situations. And then, of course, our mobile elite androids can also move around and deal with the hostilities as they present themselves. If you lose a structure or two, or a few androids, not a big deal. You just need to not have a total catastrophe, and most importantly, maintain your deterrence in the areas you're using, including the skimmer area, so that can keep working and you don't have to start from scratch. There were still quite a few of them left, so a sizable exchange of fire, but I think we gave better than we received. As I clean up the rest of this, I do want to mention there is another way that's easier to deal with the guards that are coming into the skimmer area, and that is simply to not deal with them by posting your bulk androids just outside of the mining zone. That way they won't be attacked by the guards when they come back, but they will still be close enough to be within their deterrence range and stop any of the big attacks from coming against the skimmer. Much as I like Chris as a developer, I think this is very gamey, exploity, very counterintuitive. I hate the idea that you can have deterrence on something that's in a zone where there's a bunch of guards. The prospective attackers that might be going after the skimmer but aren't because of your bulks, they should at least take into consideration there's a bunch of guards there that are going to help fight you off. From the dev side, their explanation of this is it's a more nuanced view of combat and not as cut and dry. Think of maybe a Cold War type situation. You got soldiers on each side across the fence line, and they know the enemy's over there, but neither one of them is firing at each other because that's not what their orders are. You choose for yourself which of those ideas you like better. Inventory confirms our skimmer is working. We're getting scandium and neodymium in on a regular basis. That gets us to our next step, which is that our aerospace hangar now has the resources needed to deploy a mine port. I think we'll get rid of the cutter for now, make room. The TYS Morning, what a disgustingly appropriate name. And these get Decrowning drones, which, well, do not very nice things to human beings. In this case, I don't think the augments particularly matter, but we're using drones, drone command circuits, why not? Then with the Decrowning drone selected, we want to find suitable targets for harvesting, shall we say. Yes, harvesting's the word. You can just feel the words of Agent Smith here. There was a disaster. Entire crops were lost. We're looking for structures with this orangish tint. And we don't want to do this right away. The game notes that humans will react intensely, and we need to have some combat force in place to deal with that. I'm feeling pretty confident and cocky at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and select a spot fairly close to our tower. More cautious approach could go further away if you like. As a reminder, in the full game, it is not required to do this path to get to higher intelligence classes, but it is the only way available in the demo, so feel free to throw up at this point as we notice the fact that we need thousands of preserved brains in order to build our biological mainframe. Isn't that special? Honestly, the humans weren't really using them anyway, were they? If you're the type of player that builds all of the things by habit, then you're going to run into trouble at this point, if not before. You could potentially have not just a Thorvey-type mine skimmer, but also a bauxite mine skimmer, and the slurry mine. Some people have also tried to keep the furniture and daily necessities territory control areas up even to this point. You don't have enough forces to cover everything, and you're not meant to. Whatever you need, go ahead and keep those going, but everything else, turn it off. Sometimes you got to make choices. Very straightforward here. We just grab a Decrowning drone, point at the building, and pull the highly unethical trigger. The response is a mix of biological and synthetic resistance. Fortunately for the infantry, our red combat units counter this particular type. Since we aren't going to knock them all out at once, we'll have the Keanu do some things with its spiders. Couple casualties there. They didn't particularly care for our red combat units sticking around. The usual drill, clean up the mess, bring in our replacement androids, whatever's got to happen. And there goes the last of them. Let's check on our biological mainframe, see if we have fulfilled the requirements for that yet. And indeed we have. That single raid gave us more than enough preserved brains to get one going. Electrical requirements are fairly minimal here. It's a quick build, and compared to our regular mainframes, these are going to give us twice the computing cycles and almost 10 times the neural expansion or increased intelligence for our AI. So it's definitely a big leap. When the biological mainframe finishes, we will reach Intelligence Class 3, which is the end of the content for the demo. Both because there's quite a bit of stuff involved with that, and because I'm evil and like to do cliffhangers, we're going to save that for our next and final episode in this series. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you soon in that finale.